So we're here today to discuss tribal workforce development and specifically what Coeur d'Alene is doing in this area. Just a sort of a broad question to begin with. You've been education director for the past 10 years, past decade. How would you describe, just in a nutshell, the tribe's approach to workforce development? What does it consist of?
Good question. Prior to my entering in as the director of education, we really only dealt with higher ed. And we just processed paper to make sure that the students had funding to attend the colleges and universities. And then we had a GED program, and they're all funds that we received from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And then when I stepped into the position, I even wondered if I could really do it, because I think of education quite broadly, actually, and I thought, can I really even put this picture together from birth through professional degrees? And within that first year, I still was trying to make sense of all the funding sources that we had and all the different programs that we had. And in that first year's evaluation, Robert Matt, who's the admin director of all the government programs, there's about 20 government programs that he is responsible for, and Department of Education is one of them. And in that evaluation, he had asked if I would come up with a one-page document that describes what our department does. And because it was my evaluation, I didn't tell him that I was trying to figure that out this past year, and I was just really wrestling with it, because I knew that I couldn't be a director and just feel like I was just kind of feeling my way all the time, that I really needed to come up with something that was going to provide direction. And so I was attending a conference in Baltimore, and I was just kind of penciling some things out, still thinking about what Robert had asked me to do. And I started drafting out some bullets, and I thought, this is it. This is it. And so I started labeling our early childhood center, and of course the draft that we now have doesn't look anything like the draft that I had put together, because I have some very talented people that can do that work for me. So that's how the pipeline came about. I don't think that's what Robert was thinking of, but it was what I needed to be able to provide leadership to where we were going.
So you mentioned that when you came on board to now, there's been a sea change in terms of how you approach how the education department does its work, how the workforce development approach of the tribe overall has been therefore impacted. When you came on board just about 10 years ago in your current position, what was the state of the workforce development in the tribe? What were some of the challenges that the tribe was facing that you felt like the way we're doing things now is not really cutting it? We've got to figure out a better way.
The tribe was really involved in short-term training, and they had spent thousands and thousands of dollars of training individuals. And so when I came on board, I thought, we can't continue to do that, because it's short-term and it really doesn't affect that individual's life. That's not something that they can take with them and work wherever they want, whether it's with the tribe or any other organization or throughout the world. And I thought, we need to come up with a plan that will not only provide them the skill set, but also something tangible that every individual can take with them that transfers to other organizations. And when we received the NACTEP grant, I had sat down with North Idaho College, and it was with the workforce development team. And they wanted to become very involved, knowing that we had this grant that would help develop that professional technical skill set. And I said, that doesn't work for me. I said, I really want our tribal people to come out with a certificate or a degree. That really took them back. They said, wow, we can't, that's not something we're involved in. We're involved in short-term training that will get them into the workforce, and it didn't matter the salary level to them, and that was another concern of mine, is that the salary level in workforce, most of those employment agencies just want to fill in, and it doesn't matter about the individual, and that is not what I was thinking about. I really wanted our tribal membership to have certificates, and better yet, 2- and 4-year degrees. So that was how the first degree came about that we had designed in collaboration with North Idaho College. We had, I had heard about Dennis Nitsky. He had developed a 2-year degree for Cabela's in Post Falls. And I thought, I've got to call that man. He didn't even know who I was, and so there were 3 of us that got on the phone. There was my NACTEP manager at that time, Norma, who was on the Tribal Council and has been in the Department of Ed for many, many years. So 3 of us had his number, and we did a cold call. He didn't know who I was, wasn't expecting a call, and so I told him who I was and told him that I had heard about him through this conversation and what he had done for Cabela's. And I said, Dennis, would you be interested in creating a degree for us? And he said, sure. So he flew out, and we spent a week together. And so we designed this business leadership degree, and it was based upon what our tribe needed. And there was a human resource. It was based upon stackable certificates. And so there was an HR one, there was medical center, there was a variety of stackable certificates that we put together based upon the HR directors. Because he had spent the week interviewing them and asking them what their needs were, and then working with NIC and coming up with, so not only did we come up with the stackable degrees, certificates, we came up with a 2-year degree as well. So that included all the general requirements and some required courses that we as a tribal organization wanted our students to take as well. So that went through all the processes, their curriculum council, and not all the courses were delivered. So we also had to pay, and Dennis brought in Connie, who developed the courses that were not already developed. So it went through the curriculum council, it went through the state board, because they have to approve any new certificates and programs also. And we launched it, and it has the highest number of tribal members in there. So that gives our tribal membership some options, whether if they want to go the medical route or they want to go the HR, depending on which direction they want to go. And it's been very successful because we're working with a population that never thought that they could earn a degree. And so being able to take one course at a time and then earning a certificate, they realize, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can earn a degree. And so we have a high number of our tribal members that are in that business leadership degree. And I have a hard time calling, it's not our degree, even though we are the ones that created it and paid for it. It belongs to NIC.
So you mentioned that when that effort got underway to create these these certificates and these 2-year degrees, that they were directly answering tribal needs. And you mentioned business leadership, you mentioned healthcare, you mentioned admin. Can you talk a little bit more about why those fields and how is that, you're helping to educate your people so that they can then become employed by the tribe, by some of the entities it's involved with. Can you shed a bit more light on that, about how the tribe is then getting a return on its investment?
Well, we are already beginning to see the results of it. Those individuals that have entered into the health one, for example, they have already received promotions in result of earning college credit and earning certificates, and we've got several that are coming up for graduation, and some that have already gone on to a 4-year degree at University of Idaho. I forgot to tell you, Ian, also, not only does this degree, most professional tech degrees they don't continue. You can't transfer them in. That was one of the things in one of the advisory meetings with the president with the University of Idaho, and the provost was there. We were having our advisory meeting at the casino, and each tribe gives an update of where they're at. And so I was just sharing the business leadership degree, and the president at that time, I didn't know he was having a sidebar with the provost, and he said, I want that degree to transfer to the University of Idaho. We had already been working, because at the table, not only had North Idaho College been at the meetings, but LCSC, which has a strong professional tech. So we had already worked on that 2-year degree transferring to LCSC, but we didn't even think it was going to be possible for it to be transferring to the University of Idaho. And I made sure I followed up on that to see the status over the months. So that degree transfers on to LCSC, Lewis and Clark State College, and to the University of Idaho. So for those who want to go on to earn a bachelor's in business, they have that capability too, because of that transfer. And it's all laid out in a legal document, so it can happen.
I wanted to, you already mentioned the pipeline, and I want to go into that into detail, but before we do, I wanted to get a better sense from you of where does the education department fit in terms of the overall Coeur d'Alene tribal government and all of the other aspects of that government when it comes to workforce development. Sort of where, what cog in the wheel does the education department play when it comes to how Coeur d'Alene approaches workforce development?
That's a good question. And I thought about how I was going to respond to that. Again, we're one of 20 departments, and are we truly interrelated to workforce development? I think it has happened, but I'm not quite sure that we have really made that connection, that DOE really is significant in that workforce development. The council will say to me, or HR will say to me, I want to know who your graduates are. But what I don't know is where the tribe's going in terms of the future. And I need leadership from the council to tell me, we need for you to grow this. Chief has flat out said, I want more teachers, and I don't care how you do it, I want you to do it. So I take that very seriously, and so we are really working on growing our teachers. He wants more Native teachers in our schools, and so we're deliberately working on that. But I need more guidance from the tribal council in terms of where are you going, so that we can be meeting your needs.
So Chief is Chairman Chief Allen, just
Yes.
to clarify there.
Yeah.
So you kind of, I was going to ask you this question about what sort of future is the tribe trying to create, and where does Department of Education fit into that? But it sounds like there's still some feeling out that's going on between the work that you do and your staff does, and the sort of the overall strategic vision of the tribe, and there needs to be more of a meshing there, right?
There does. There truly does. I mean, again, I'm only one person, and I don't even want to pretend that I know where we're going. I'm just trying to provide the best direction, I think. But it would be very, very helpful if I knew clearly where we're going so that we could make sure. I do know, though, at this point that the graduates that we're producing, we don't have enough positions for them, and that's a little alarming. And I do know they want us to reverse individuals that are in those upper management positions. I think 99% of us directors are members of the Coeur d'Alene tribe. I think there's only a couple of directors that are non-native. But the next level of management, they have said, we want you to reverse that. But for example, in natural resources, those are high science and math courses, and we're really trying to figure out how to get our students through those math courses successfully now, and we're still trying to figure that out. And so, yes, they have given that direction in terms of reversing those management.
So basically making sure that below the department head level, that those over time become inhabited, those positions inhabited by tribal members as well.
Yes, that is something they want me to work on.
So I would imagine that that's going to require some concerted effort to build relationships, maintain ongoing communication with those various departments to figure out what are your needs, what sort of positions are you trying to ultimately have filled by tribal members, and what does that mean for our task at education in terms of making sure that we're identifying students who have promise, ability, and interest to go into those particular fields and showing them the path to get there.
And I think it also takes some nudging from that director also. For example, in natural resources, the technicians really like what they do. They like the outdoors, and if that means they have to enter into those management positions, that means it's desk work, and that's not something they want to do. But I think it does take more nudging from the directors too, to see the talent, to know the talent, and to really do some serious nudging in terms of, we had an individual that has earned a 2-year degree, and I have been after him, and my manager in NACTEP has been after him to go on, and he's gotten impatient with us and wants us to back off. But he would be an ideal candidate to move into that upper management. So the directors have a responsibility to help us too. And we're always looking for talent. I'm constantly telling people, I'm flat out. There was a lady in natural resource, she's an office manager, and in fact it was when Tim was out. We were talking with her because she oversees that whole, it's the largest department the tribe has, and I said, do you have a degree? She goes, no. I said, I want you over at our department. I expect you over there. She is earning a 4.0 now. So it's just constant, looking at talent based upon what you see externally, and so we get a lot of students that way. But that's us. That's my team of people that are telling people to get into our department, and we have the means to support you. And
so it sounds like part of the challenge is for tribes big and small, is to make sure that you have the systems in place to be able to track your own people in terms of, what are their skill sets? What's their level of education? Once you've identified an individual that you maybe want to channel into a particular field or even a particular position, as you're talking about, that sort of that rung below the department head, knowing who they are and providing that direct encouragement and guidance to get them to that next level.
Yes, it's we're having a lot of fun doing it. We still have some work to do in terms of supporting them in those math courses. I just can't figure out the formula on how to do that. We now have a new NACTEP manager, and she's strong in those math courses, and we hope that she can help us as well. But we've got to figure that out, because that's really a serious blockage.
So I want to dive into the pipeline now.
Okay.
And the pipeline has been central to the Department of Education's work over the past decade. And in preparing for this interview, I wasn't sure what to call the pipeline. Is it a process? Is it a tool? Is it a roadmap? Maybe if you could start there and just say, how do you guys describe it back home?
It's probably all of the above. It's helpful for me. Really, I'm probably the one. It drives me, to be honest, and it helps me to focus in on every segment of that pipeline, and it drives my meetings with each of my managers also. For example, the early childhood center, when that was placed under the Department of Ed, and Shauna was the executive director at that time, and thank goodness she was in that position, because both of us are Coeur d'Alene's, and she's a brilliant young lady also. But there were some serious issues within our early childhood center, and we had to make some very difficult decisions, because we had staff that were not only, the title of that, it's an early childhood learning center. Learning is really key. However, it had become, parents viewed it as a child care. And so teachers were having to take care of children prior to the school day starting and at the end of the day. And so that, plus go to school, plus clean those rooms, which is difficult. It's hard labor to clean those. A lot was being asked of them, and so we had to reverse it from being a child care center to a learning center, and that took, and to become a data-driven center also. That we needed, they were all collecting the data the feds wanted, but I said, what do we need? We need to collect data that's going to be important to us. Yes, I know we have to meet the mandate of the feds, but we need to know what's going on within our center. So I led them in a direction that I wasn't even really skilled to be able to do. I just knew this gut level feeling that we needed to design our own data templates and make decisions in terms of what we needed to collect and the story it was going to tell us. And so over 3 years, it took 3 years to become a data-driven center, and for us to begin collecting data that was going to tell us what was going on health-wise with our children, educationally, nutritionally, in all the content areas. So we have a pretty clear picture of what's going on with our little ones and what we need to do. We have a pretty clear picture of what's going on with our families also, and what we need to do to reverse that situation. So it provides me the capability to be able to provide that leadership to Shauna during that time. And every segment of that pipeline, it provides me the ability to meet with every one of those managers and say, where are we at with this?
So from what you're saying, it's a guide for assessing the state of things, and it's also then a guide for decision making. It's a lens through which to make decisions.
Yes.
So I get the sense of how its importance to your work, and I've seen the visual of it. It's stunning. And the level of details is equally stunning. But can you describe in maybe a couple minutes what exactly is involved with the pipeline, and what is it looking to address? So obviously this pipeline was developed because the way things were, the way you were doing things was not cutting it in your estimation, the estimation of your colleagues. So you can maybe give a quick synopsis of what it is and why it came about.
It gave the tribe a voice. Most importantly, it gave the tribe a voice. And it put education, it became our responsibility rather than always blaming everyone else. And then it put us at the table in terms of what we wanted for our tribal membership, and that we needed to start learning to use our voice in terms of what is important to us. And so I have been able to then develop those partnerships and to be able to tell them this is what we want for our youth, especially for the students that are attending the plumber school. They've not seen us as a significant partner at all, that they saw themselves as we're the educators, we're the teachers, we're the one that know how to teach. But once we began collecting our own data and saying, no, we've got some serious issues here. There was a group of us that collected data on 5 cohort groups that had gone through the plumber, and it became very clear that we had some serious issues. And so that tool helped me to clearly articulate things aren't good and things aren't going well for our youth. So it really has helped us to move towards becoming sovereign, I guess, to really use our voice. We've just kind of hands off, and that's not the way it should be. Tribes shouldn't allow that to happen, and we need to know what's going on.
Well, I know in what I've learned about the pipeline thus far, and this attention to generating data that the tribe has deemed is important for us to understand where we're at, and also to tell, from what you're saying, tell our story to others whose decisions and whose work impacts us, like the local school, as you mentioned. And the pipeline is basically birth through adulthood, right? It covers the whole gamut.
Yes.
And from what I understand, the development of this pipeline, the development of the data that informs this process, this tool, the use of this tool is the illumination of gaps, right? Where you're seeing your own people fall out of the education process. And then really focusing like a laser on those gaps and figure out what do we need to do, what services can we bring to bear to really neutralize this issue, to provide our own people the direct and one-on-one support to keep them in school, to keep them succeeding, to get them to the point where they can contribute to the workforce, they can build productive careers and not be in a situation where they can't find a job, don't have the skills, that sort of thing.
Okay. What we're learning, of course, is, I'm going to start back with our infants, is that without a doubt, those are our most high-risk families. And it's very clear to me that that is affecting our babies, and literacy is enormous. And so I've really been working on that with all of our teachers and the significance of developing that vocabulary, because that is putting our babies behind from the get-go. And it really pains me to know that that's something we can do as a tribe. And so really coming up with that strategy, and we're working on that. So that affects them for the rest of their lives. And also we have knowledge of our families and their engagement with substance abuse. That too is affecting them along that pipeline. And when we were meeting over 20 months with Chief Allen and this tribal collaboration group, I was sharing with them and said that what is happening with our babies is going to show up on that pipeline. And I said, it does show up on the pipeline. And the importance of addressing that at this level, and hopefully that they understand it. And definitely attendance, you know, at ECLC, parents could bring their children in at 11, 12 o'clock during the day, and they could be late picking them up. And I just said, no, we're not going to do that. We need to take a look at our policies and procedures, and we need to make sure we're following those policies and procedures. Attendance has increased, and I hope that we see that that affects attendance down the pipeline, because I see that it's showing up in other grade levels, the importance of attendance, and parents need to get their children. So one of the other things that substance abuse is affecting. So what our infants have experienced at a very young age, they're internalizing that, and that is showing up also when they start middle school. And we have the results of a community use survey, and our youth start using substance abuse at 7th grade. And of course that too affects them, and so we're taking a look at ways on how we can address that. But each one of my managers are responsible for submitting a semester report to me, so I know every semester what's happening in every program, from infants through PhDs. And so those reports, it takes a while to come in because the semester just ended in December, and grades and everything come in through the month of January, and so those final semester reports are coming in. Like our NACTEP right now came in to me last week, and we had 50 individuals that are in school, and we had a 60% success rate out of those 50. And the majority of those students are part-time students. They're not full-time like our higher ed students, but it's pretty revealing in terms of what's going on. What we don't have set up, and we paid money, we paid a consultant $20,000 to help us develop a long-term longitudinal program. That didn't work, and the tribe hired someone, and that didn't work, but we really need someone who can help us set up. And one of my managers was talking to me last week and saying, what if we paid part of this, we hired someone out in NACTIV? And I said, well, that's a great idea. Let me take a look at that, see if we can afford it. Who could help us set up that longitudinal database so that we could follow every individual, every segment of the way? It's very helpful in telling us where the gaps are. We have a huge gap in that middle school, and I'm in the process of writing a grant for them at this time.
One of the other things I know you guys have done in terms of identifying and then addressing the gaps through, you know, the education process as your citizens move from, you know, birth through to adulthood is exposing your young people to careers, different careers at an early age. Can you talk about why that focus and what forms does that take?
Okay. We are. Right now we have a very strong college and career preparation program, and it's at the high school level at this time, and that involves being able to have students do two campus visits twice a year. And so by the time they graduate from high school, they have attended visited 4 college campuses. And we also hold a college and career fair every year, and middle school students are able to participate in that as well as our entire high school. We also invite our families to attend that as well. And recently we just held a college night for our high school students, and we also want parents to become more involved in their students' education. So we had someone train them in the family links so that they would pay attention to their son or daughter's grades or attendance, etc., and have conversations with their son or daughter, and then also shared with them all the dual credit programs, the college programs that are available to them. So I think we're doing a much better job in terms of introducing students to college. In fact, we're beginning to see an increase of students going on to 2-year, and a larger increase number of students that are going directly on to 4-year universities as well.
So also in terms of exposing your young people to careers, you guys are channeling some of them into internships, right?
We do.
So they can see what sort of opportunities are available within the tribe, its enterprises, locally, et cetera.
So the past 8 years, we have been able to invite students to apply for summer internships, and they are about 6 weeks long. And they have been designed specifically in collaboration with tribal programs. So we have the Benoit Medical Center, we have several openings there, natural resources, and that seems to be a fond one for students. Finance, HR, our department, it's actually pretty broad-based. There's a high number of programs that are involved in the summer internships. Students, so we market those internships, students have to apply for those internships, plus they have to be interviewed. It is not who you are, it's based upon that interview committee selects them for those internships. And they have also been designed in collaboration with that manager in terms of the skill set that we want them to learn during that 6 weeks. And then they are evaluated, and they are drug tested as all of us. So they actually have to follow the same HR policies that we do. And we've had to let students go too.
So it's not just about exposing them to a particular career they might be interested in, but it's actually exposing them to what real life adult professional world is like, right?
Absolutely. And I did get some flack in terms of the last 2 years they have to complete the application online, and it was interesting, some of the feedback. I mean, again, that low standard that some individuals have, well, you know, our students can't do that, and I refuse to back down and just say they need to learn to complete a professional application. And we've seen an enormous difference. The kids are coming in with ties, the young ladies are all dressed up, and their response to the interview question, it's not dummied down at all. And it's amazing to see the growth in the students over the past 8 years.
So one of the aspects of the education pipeline that I want to focus on is when it was first created, there was an interagency team that was brought together to basically inventory the services that other programs were providing. So, you know, if we're going to be comprehensive in our approach to preparing our young people to succeed as they go into adulthood, what services and tools do we have at our disposal? Can you talk a little bit about that and how what this team does? What does it work on?
We really take a look at all the services, and that's updated every year. That pipeline and those agencies or partners that are helping support every segment of it, that's updated every year. I want to make sure that it's factual and that we're not making these up. And so we wanted to make sure that collectively we were supporting each segment and what partners are available to help support each segment of it. And so we just really take a look at that every year and have to analyze, what's being successful, what's not, and eliminate those that aren't. And who can bring in some money. And so we work very closely with the colleges and universities as well. They're strong partners.
You mentioned partnerships, and I wanted to touch on that. It sounds like there were some partnerships that were in place when you came into your position, but that has certainly ramped up since you've been involved, and certainly with the development of the pipeline, it relies heavily on partnerships. Can you talk about the role of partnerships in Coeur d'Alene's approach to workforce development, the pipeline, and perhaps spotlight a few of the partnerships that have been most beneficial and why?
Sure. I think our partnership with WSU, Washington State University, has been substantial. When I serve on those advisory, I'm Chief's designee, so I'm his voice on those advisory committees. And so that pipeline has allowed me a voice. So I'm not only looking to look for support for students on campus, I'm looking for support off campus as well. There was a program, the tribe already had a relationship with WSU because we served on the advisory committee. However, there was a piece of land, and it was on the water, that WSU, Camp Larson, that WSU wanted to give it back. And so what they did at that time was negotiate an agreement for that property. The tribe would pay them $250,000 a year over 5 years. And in result of that partnership, WSU then said, the College of Ed, we will give back to you. So in essence, even though the tribe was giving WSU $250,000 over 5 years, it really was free because we received actually that money extended into 7 and 8 years. We were able to get 8 years of services out of WSU. That included scholarships for students attending WSU. It provided a summer camp for our youth and several other services, and then I had changed a couple of them over that period of time. So that opened a door for us, and I was concerned, and I still am concerned to this day, that our students are attending these colleges and universities, and they may be earning that skill set, but what I'm concerned about is that they're losing who they are as Native people. And so one of the things that I shared with WSU is I was concerned about that. And so in result of that conversation with the provost at that time is that they developed a nation building program, and it's completing, well, it's in its 3rd year. And he also provided scholarships for freshman students that are coming out of colleges or out of high school, and they have to have a 3-point or above. They're selected very, very carefully. And also transfer students. And they designed a program that in accepting this scholarship, you have to take these sequence of 1 credit courses, and it focuses on tribal sovereignty and really those 4 core values that we want students to come out with: stewardship, scholarship, membership, guardianship. And we're beginning to see a difference in the students that we're producing at WSU now, because not only are they learning the skill set that's important in their degree, but they're also learning about who they are, and they're going to come back and want to serve, and that's very, very important. Because I was telling my sister the other day, I said, my concern, my legacy that I might leave is that we're going to have these graduates, but so what? If they do not have that desire to serve and to create change, that's the legacy I hope that we can. And so I've been working with the University of Idaho. Again, that advisory committee provides me the capacity to use my voice and to ask what we want.
So the pipeline has been in existence for going on 10 years. It's not a finished product. It's organically evolving. You guys are organically evolving it as you're learning more about your own people, what their needs are, where the gaps are, et cetera. As you learn more about where the tribe wants to head, what the opportunities are. Can you talk about how you were refining the pipeline, growing the pipeline, perhaps some of the recent work, and then what do you see for the future?
Okay. What we're working on most recently is our kids need to know who they are. So really working on place-based education, and University of Idaho wrote a Back to the Earth grant, NSF grant, with my support. And we learned a lot through that process. And most importantly, I learned that we need to be the authors of those NSF grants. I don't have the voice and didn't have the voice on that grant because of, not that the university wasn't kind and were trying to shut me out, that wasn't it at all. I have this notion that, they were the lead, then that put me kind of in the back seat, and I'm not comfortable with that. And so we did complete a National Science Foundation grant recently, and the tribe is the lead on it. I was not one of the main authors, but I was one of the main. I came up with the foundation of that grant and what it needed to do. What it needs to do is that, and how I had put the visual together, is that we need to grow our own researchers. And we need to, so that we can conduct our own research, that we're producing our own native researchers. Because we offered the tribal sovereignty course last spring, and we had 99% of the students were tribal members. It changed their life. They did not have that federal policy history at all. So they now fully understood why we are and where we are today. And they truly understood, now I know how I can serve. And I can serve from the field I want to field. And so that was enormous. So we wrote that National Science Foundation grant. I hope it's funded, but it's going to fund our own graduate students, and so that they can conduct research that's important to us, that will help change some of those influences that we see on that pipeline. We had the 20 students that have entered into this sequence of courses, and of course the first one was the tribal sovereignty course, and they took 2 research courses, and they are in there. What did they take this fall? They took that was the second research course, and then this spring they are taking an education course, and then next fall an imperialism course, which will give them the world view of colonialization. And this certificate is going to drop into EDD and a PhD program. And so this certificate will be offered by the Coeur d'Alene tribe.
So before we started rolling tape on this interview, you and I were talking, and you kept mentioning the 20 months of work that you've been engaged in, you and your colleagues and the elected leadership. Can you talk a little bit about what that 20 months of work has involved, and how is it going to contribute to growing the pipeline, strengthening the pipeline over time, and achieving the desired results of why that pipeline was created to begin with?
We wrote a Department of Justice grant, and it was a comprehensive planning grant, and so we were funded, and then I hired a private consultant, Cookie Allen, and so phase one was that she interviewed all of the goal of the project was to take a look at substance abuse and substance abuse having on our youth and our community. And so she spent months, I think it was 7 months, interviewing directors and managers in courts, probation, our chief of police, police officers, social services, DOE, BMC, etc. Phase 2 has been the analysis of it, and that began bringing the directors together at the table. And so we started meeting last spring, and we met all the way through December. And that team involved Chief Allen, our chairman, Robert Matt, admin director, Ernie Stensgar, our vice chairman, Charlotte, who is also the truancy officer, but she's also a council member, plus all the directors. We've never done that before. And actually, the Department of Justice has this formula that they want you to follow in terms of going through this process, and we chose not to do that. We didn't want to do that. And we got nervous towards the end because we did need the specialist's help towards the end, because we have all this data and how do you put it together and make sense of it and put it into a comprehensive plan. So in the end, we needed them, and they came in December and met with us. And we were so greatly relieved that they understood and honored the process that we went through as a tribe. Again, talking about tribal sovereignty, we needed to guide that. We didn't want some organization to say you need to go through A, B, C, D, and then you're going to come out with this package and put it on your shelf and never deal with it. This was real. And we have some issues. Substance abuse is affecting the lives of our infants, our youth, and our elders too. And to have to stare that in the face and take a look at it and to have some honest conversations about what we're seeing and how we all are all impacting that or not impacting that.
So one final wrap-up question, kind of crystallize the pipeline process and this recent work that you mentioned. It sounds like the pipeline generally and this recent work around documenting the gravity of substance abuse issues in your community, it really empowers informed decision making, not just by you, but by the elected officials to say, how are we going to be strategic and targeted with the application of resources, the application of people to, be more effective when it comes to developing our workforce, be more effective when it comes to making sure that our kids are getting through the education process and being ready for careers. I mean, is that not the ultimate end goal of all of this?
Definitely, it truly is. And so I'm anxious to see, we're going into phase 3, and that's putting that plan together and what that's going to look like. And
well, Dr. Meyer, I really appreciate you taking some time to share your thoughts and wisdom and experience. It sounds like a lot of exciting work ahead, daunting work, but exciting work. And I'm very anxious to see what the pipeline looks like and how it's working 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Well, I'll be retired by then. But we are involved in some succession planning
Well,
right
that's
now,
good.
so, yeah.
Well, appreciate your time and for sharing the extraordinary work that you and Coeur d'Alene are doing in the areas of education and workforce development.